Ukraine is looking to rebuild its beleaguered air force for the 2030s and beyond, and they're starting with the Yaz-39 Gripen. The country made headlines last month when President Zelensky announced that Ukraine wanted to buy as many as 150 Gripens, the multi-role single-engine fighter jet produced by Swedish manufacturer Saab. Unlike other jets provided by NATO countries, the Gripen was literally designed for the dispersed operations the Ukrainian Air Force is conducting right now, where jets land on roads and constantly rotate between bases to avoid being targeted by Russian missiles and drones. The newer Gripens also sport better radar, electronic warfare systems, and the ability to fire longer range missiles, all of which would give Ukraine an edge in the skies they don't currently hold, even with Western donated jets such as F-16s and Mirage 2000s. But wonder weapon the Gripen is not. We spoke with one expert who told us why, despite its many strengths, the fighter won't give Ukraine a decisive advantage anytime soon. Welcome back to Task and Purpose, everybody. I am once again Kyle, and today we are talking all about the Gripen, which is not pronounced Gripen, which is how I had been pronouncing it because I had only ever read about it. So we're going to talk about the Gripen, what it can and can't do for Ukraine, and what this means for the country as it continues to fight Russia's invasion. But before we get to that, a quick word from today's sponsor, Odoo. If you're in manufacturing, you already know the challenges. Orders stack up, delays start sneaking in, all your tools that are supposed to make your life easier start to do the opposite. Odoo fixes that. Odoo gives you one dashboard where you can manage assembly stations, check load times, track work orders, keep up with shipments. Everything that happens on your floor, you can see. Their barcode app makes it easy to scan and log components in real time right from the production line. So you spend less time fixing data errors and more time getting orders out the door. Need to check a worksheet or bill of materials? It's all right there, right in the dashboard, connected and synced. With Odoo, you have everything covered from planning to production with smooth and simple software. Start with your first app for free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com. You'll be happy you did, and we'd like to thank Odoo for sponsoring today's episode. Like the war on the ground, the air war over Ukraine today is one of attrition. Both sides are saturated with air defense systems such that neither can win long-term control over the skies, which also contributes greatly to the grinding attrition on the ground. Instead, much of the air war involves lobbing missiles, attack drones, and glide bombs at each other, or, on the other side of the coin, trying to shoot those down. We've talked a lot in previous videos about the role that drones play over Ukraine, but today we're focusing on manned fighter aircraft. To help paint a more complete picture of what's actually going on, we, and by we I mean David, spoke with Justin Bronk, a senior research fellow for air power and technology at the Royal United Services Institute, which is a London-based think tank. Our interview with Bronk forms the basis for pretty much this entire video, so we really appreciate him taking his time to share his expertise with us and all of you. Bronk said the main threat Russian fighters such as the Su-34 and Su-35 pose to Ukraine is the hundreds of glide bombs they've been dropping on military and civilian targets nearly every week. These bombs can fly about 45 miles, with reports of new jet engine-equipped bombs reaching 124 miles. That range lets Russian fighters drop glide bombs from well behind the front lines and beyond the range of Ukrainian counter-air weapons. Ukraine is dropping glide bombs of its own, though at a much smaller scale. Before the war, Ukraine had about 100 fighter jets, mostly Soviet-made or designed MiG-29s and Su-27s. While it's lost about 90 in the 3 years since, according to the Dutch research group Oryx, Ukraine has stayed in the fight in large part thanks to friendly countries donating spare fighter jets or the parts to bring mothballed ones back into service. Countries such as Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Norway have donated more than 40 F-16s, with another 40 or so on the way. France will reportedly donate up to 20 of its Mirage fighters, and several of which are already flying in combat. Both the Mirage 2000s and F-16s are fourth-generation Western-made jets with better radar than the ones on MiG-29s and Su-27s. That helps them spot small targets such as UAVs and cruise missiles, which are especially difficult to pick out from the ground clutter. They also have better threat warning systems, such as radar warning receivers, which tell pilots when they're locked on by enemy radar-guided missiles. Both aircraft are proving their worth in protecting Ukrainian cities and infrastructure from missiles and drones, with F-16s also performing ground attack and reconnaissance missions using a range of munitions and electronic warfare pods. But these are all older model F-16s and Mirage 2000s, and newer Gripens would be an improvement, so let's discuss how. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he expects the first Gripen deliveries in 2026, which likely means they'd be second-hand C or D models. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said it could take about 3 years for brand new Gripen E's and F's, the latest model of the jet, to arrive in Ukraine. That's actually pretty fast considering how complicated modern fighter jets are to build, and Saab is scaling up its Gripen production to meet demand from a number of buyers, including Brazil, Thailand, and Sweden itself. Gripens won't be the only game in town though. Zelensky said he envisioned a fleet of 250 fighters, including newer F-16s and French-built Rafales, but the Gripen would still make up the bulk of the force, and there are a lot of reasons why Ukraine went this direction. The first is that the Gripen was designed for the kind of war Ukraine is fighting now. The Swedish Air Force was built to counter an invasion from the much larger Soviet Union, so its aircraft were built to take off and land from roads, short runways, and reserve bases to avoid giving the invaders a predictable target to shoot at. These distributed operations, as they're called, have also increasingly become a part of US Air Force training, with F-35s, A-10s, and other aircraft using highways and small airfields to rearm, refuel, and take off again. When development first started in the late 1970s, the Gripen was designed to be cheap to build, simple to maintain, easy to upgrade with new technology, and capable of landing on roads to perform a wide range of missions. We're gonna get into some unsexy details here because military equipment takes more than just range, speed, and armor to be effective. It also needs to fit social, economic, and environmental context to keep working in a long, all-out war. Much of Sweden's military is conscripted, so a Gripen ground crew might have one maintainer with years of experience, while the other 5 might be teenagers with just 3 months of training. The fighter was designed with that in mind, so it requires fewer tools and simpler procedures, which often means less equipment to carry and less time needed to train maintainers. One example, which is pretty simple but not really when you think about it, are the panels on the side of the aircraft that maintainers have to open to access batteries, refueling points, and other systems. While panels on other aircraft might need a wrench to open, many of the Gripen's panels can be popped open tool-free with just the push of a button, which, according to Justin Bronk, makes it easier to work on while wearing gloves in the freezing cold. The jet is also quite low to the ground, which means short kings and queens can access just about anything without a ladder. All the other tools, equipment, and spare parts can fit in a 20-foot shipping container pulled by a small truck. Even complex operations like an engine replacement can be done in an hour, according to Saab, compared to over an hour just to remove the engine on an F-16. There are trade-offs to this design philosophy, though. Take the landing gear for instance. F-16s are designed to land on long runways, so their landing gear is dainty compared to that of the Gripen, which is designed for short runways where they have to take a lot of weight quickly. That means the Gripen gear is heavier, which means more weight on the aircraft, shorter range, and slower acceleration. Ease of maintenance, really simple engine replacement procedures, and making it easier for short kings and queens to work on it are really cool, but how does this actually help Ukraine now? Trade-offs aside, the Gripen's design is well suited for Ukraine, which A, doesn't have much experience with the Gripen and has to learn how to use it quickly, B, has a lot of conscripts, and C, is dispersing fighter operations across the entire country. Ukraine has already started doing this with the F-16. In July, our good friends at the War Zone reported that the Ukrainian Air Force was using a fleet of 10 trucks to move spare parts, munitions, a mobile command post, and even a sleeper trailer to support F-16s on the go. This has turned the F-16 into something like a band on tour with roadies and everything. Well, maybe not groupies, but who knows? Staying mobile is key to survival. At the Air and Space Forces Association Warfare Symposium in March, General James B. Hecker, then the head of U.S. Air Forces in Europe, talked about his regular meetings with the commander of the Ukrainian Air Force. He said they've been very successful in not getting their aircraft hit on the ground. And I asked him, how is that? What do you do? And he goes, well, we never take off and land at the same airfield. So the Ukrainians are making dispersed ops work with the F-16 and the Mirage, even though neither aircraft was designed for that kind of thing. The advantage of the Gripen is that the aircraft was specifically built for it, which, according to Justin Bronk, just makes that easier. And unlike the F-16, Ukraine has a head start getting its people familiar with the Gripen. Sweden announced plans to train pilots and ground crews on the jet back in 2023, and Ukrainian officials say they already have a group of pilots ready to fly it. But once these jets are sporting Ukrainian flags and tail numbers, what will they carry? Perhaps the most important explodey thing that will be slung under the Gripen is the Meteor, a European radar-guided air-to-air missile with significantly longer range than anything Ukraine's current fighter fleet can fire today. Credit to me for saying current fighter fleet can fire today just 2 times to get it right. Pilots in the Gripen could use the Meteor to finally threaten Russian fighters, flying combat air patrols and lobbing glide bombs from far behind the Russian side of the front lines. To attack those aircraft, Justin Bronk said Ukrainian pilots would likely fly at low altitude to stay under Russian air defense radars, then pop up to launch missiles. Air is denser at low altitude, and dense air means more drag and reduced range, so you need a missile with a ton of energy to close that distance while climbing up from the deck. It's kind of like when power hitters go into Coors Field where the Rockies play and just start jacking bombs over the fence because it's a mile high and the air's thin. Bronk said the Meteor is the only thing that could potentially offer Ukraine a way to change the air balance by significantly threatening Russian glide bomb sorties and potentially pushing their fighter combat air patrols further back, which would give them more access at low level near the front lines. That sounds promising, but even if Ukraine gets the Gripen, they may not get the Meteor. For that to happen, Bronk explained, the 6 nations that developed the missile, the UK, Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and Sweden, would have to agree to it, which could pose a long-term security risk for them. If the Russians get hold of a dud Meteor, for example, they could use that to figure out how it works and put together countermeasures, or even reverse engineer their own, something Russians have been doing since the Soviet days. Beyond the Meteor, the Gripen C and D models also bring newer radar and electronic warfare systems, which give them better situational awareness and self-defense options than Ukraine's current fleet. The Gripen E model is even better, and it has an active electronically scanned array radar, which lets pilots see things further out and in much greater detail than older radars. The Gripen can also carry basically any other type of ordnance you can think of, like air-to-air sidewinders or AMRAAM missiles, and the air-to-ground JDAMs, Mavericks, and small-diameter bombs. But unfortunately for Ukraine, the Gripen is not a miracle weapon and comes with real limitations, so let's get into that. Despite all this, neither the Gripen C, D, or E is a game changer. Ukraine is doing a hell of a job chipping away at Russia's air defenses and hitting their infrastructure far into the country using drones and cruise missiles, which has forced Russia to thin out its systems to cover a wider area. The problem is that Russia just simply has too many air defense systems for Ukraine to systematically destroy them all and gain long-term air superiority. Winning control of that airspace would be difficult even for the US Air Force, with their fancy F-35s and F-22s, its PhD equivalent flight instructors, and its support from the other services. In fact, the Air Force is leaning into a concept called pulsed air power, where, instead of achieving permanent and ubiquitous air superiority, the service fights for temporary air superiority over certain areas to let the rest of the military do its thing. All of that means that even if 150 Gripen Es arrive in Ukraine tomorrow, they still might not win air superiority. But the Meteor, the ease of maintenance, and the better radars and electronic warfare systems would give them more ways to make things way harder for the Russians. Of course, the elephant in the room is, can Ukraine survive until it receives Gripen C or D models in significant numbers, let alone another 3 years until the Gripen E arrives? Justin Bronk said the answer is up to us US and Europe and North America to decide. Both the US and Western Europe need to keep sending Ukraine weapons, ammunition, and other supplies for it to have a chance. While it seems likely that this support will continue and Russia doesn't seem capable of taking Kyiv anytime soon, nothing is guaranteed. I did not write this script. David Roza wrote the script because he said in his own words, he is freaking obsessed with the Gripen. So it was really fun to just let him go wild on this and talk to people that he wanted to. It was a great script. I enjoyed reading it and editing it and learning more about it. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and say so in the comments and give David a little shout out because it's honestly great what he's doing for us here. I really appreciate it. I hope you do too. And as always, Savvy edited the video, and you can give them a shout out because they also do great work. At the end of the day, I do a lot of the scripts, but I just read the words into the camera and then everyone else does all the hard stuff. This only takes like 30-45 minutes to read. It takes a long time to do everything else. Anyways, like I said in previous videos, we're gonna use the end to catch up on channel stuff. Up until, the holidays, I said in a few others before this, that the holidays in the military, and I know a lot of our viewers are in the military, the holidays can be tough. Especially you're 18, 19 years old, you're stuck at the barracks, which are depressing on even a good day, but especially during the holidays when everyone else gets going and gets block leave. So if you find yourself in the barracks, you find yourself having a tough time, go ahead and email me at kyle.gunn@taskandpurpose.com. I can't promise anything, but I'll respond. Maybe I'll just tell you to suck it up. I won't do that. That was Staff Sergeant Gunn back in the day. I probably did that. Not proud of it, but hey, whatever you need, I can be here for you. If you're local to the Eastern North Carolina area where I am, maybe we can even meet up. If you just need somewhere to go for the holidays, I'll do what I can. Task and Purpose will do what it can do. We just want to make sure that you're all right. I really care about the military community. Even though I'm out, I really care about Marines especially, but Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, Space Force, whatever you got, we are here for you guys. It's not the other way around. So if you need something, shoot me an email. Other than that, I'm Kyle, your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.